morning, everyone, and welcome. It is FPC Radio Live. It's Wednesday, January 31st. We're already 1 month down here in 2024, and obviously we already know the Super Bowl matchup. 49ers, Chiefs, set to kick off a week from Sunday in fabulous Las Vegas, John. Fabulous Las Vegas. And I was thinking about this. You know, outside of the teams that maybe lost in the conference championship to these two teams, I don't think there's any team out there that might be more upset than the Raiders, who not only have their hated division rival Chiefs back in the Super Bowl, but they also have their former Cross Bay rival in San Francisco, both playing in their home stadium before they get a single home playoff game. That's there's a lot of funny things that go into that. But yeah, that's where we're at right now, John.
And that 49ers-Raiders rivalry is real. It went all the way up to the owners, Eddie DeBartolo and Al Davis, and fighting over territory, market share, and all of that stuff. So those two organizations despise each other. The Chiefs, obviously, being in the same division with the Raiders forever, being AFL opponents for a decade, that rivalry is real. I mean, look, the Raiders haven't been in a Super Bowl in over 20 years. They haven't won one for 40 years. They still remain a pretty big brand. I think the uniforms are cool, the color scheme's cool, and, you know, they're still the most popular team in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. The Raiders are more popular in LA than the Rams or the Chargers, certainly. Probably second is USC when USC is real good. So they do have quite a market share. But, yeah, they have been relevant on the field for 20 years. But it's going to be pretty cool to be in Vegas, and I'm sure that everyone that goes there is going to say, can we have it here like every year at some point, which I think would be a bit much because you want to appease other owners. But I think you're going to see Vegas in the rotation every 4 years without question.
Well, I mean, let's see how these next couple of weeks go, because, you know, look, there's always management that has to be done during these weeks. I mean, it's a different setup. You're at times a week, dealing with all the media, dealing with all the just all the other distractions that come with Super Bowl week and the lead up to it. And then you add in the fact that you're in Las Vegas. And I know that the hotels are off the strip and kind of away from all that. But the temptation is still there. And I'm not saying that these players are they're on a leash, and if you let the leash go, they're just going to run crazy. No, I mean, obviously they're responsible grown adults, but, you know, temptation is temptation, and you're sitting there trying to focus on a game. So I think the allure is obviously there. You know, you add in the fact that, you know, the gambling hub of the country and you know, how that's taken over the NFL. Yeah, I mean, the aesthetic of it is, yeah, let's play in Vegas. It's a great brand new stadium. You have relatively easy access in and out. I mean, there's obviously plenty of hotels. So I think from that point of view, it's a great idea. But let's see how this actually plays out first before we start, championing Las Vegas as a permanent Super Bowl type home.
Yeah, I mean, you always want to be careful. I just remember 25 years ago, Eugene Robinson was NFL Man of the Year and then got caught with a woman of the night, like a night or two before the Super Bowl, and kind of really shook up that team. I mean, they were going to lose to the Broncos anyway, but that
we call those friends of the road, John. Friends of the road,
yeah, which are easily accessible in Las Vegas, right? So,
no comment.
Like you said, Ian, it is your favorite city, so that's a good thing. I've been there half a dozen times. I like it. I'm not a big gambler anymore. In fact, the last time I went there, I barely gambled. I think I only gambled on horse racing because I enjoyed that. You feel like the afternoon.
Well, there's so much to do out there outside of gambling. Sure. So, you know, there's plenty of things to occupy the players' time. There's some great golf courses out there if that's their thing. Mm-hmm. And of course, they're going to have their hands full, obviously, preparing for the game. So it's not like, you know, they're just like, hey, we'll see you in a week. Have fun. You know, there's a lot, but, you know, we know how things are. You know, it can create some temptation that maybe wouldn't otherwise be felt in, say, Detroit. You know,
right, where it's frigid, or Minnesota, where it's frigid.
Yeah, no one's going outside right now.
No one's going outside. Yeah, you just did everything at the mall, and everything's connected. Mm-hmm. You never wanted to see the outside at all, for sure. And again, Kansas City has been there 4 out of the last 5 years. San Francisco was here 4 years ago. So there's still a lot of the same players on both teams. So, Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator with the Falcons. I kind of grew up around this with his dad going to so many Super Bowls. So I think both teams have enough experience that, they should be on their best behavior. And like you said, it's a good idea that they're both staying like 45 minutes away from the Strip. I mean, like you said, it's easy to get to and from those places. They have access to a lot. But, yeah, I think they'll be preoccupied with, preparing for the game, although a lot of times the coaches want to get the game plan installed before they head to the Super Bowl site. But these are two teams that should be prepared for this in terms of their past experiences.
Yeah, I mean, and that's obviously going to play a role. I mean, maybe it's a little bit different if you're Detroit, who, I mean, from top to bottom, not just the players, but the organization is probably in awe of just being there. I mean, and I always brought this up at the time. It's like, remember when Sean McVay met Bill Belichick before the Super Bowl, and he was just awestruck. I feel like the obviously the important thing for the Lions is they had a guy like Jared Goff who had obviously been in that, ironically in that, or coincidentally rather, in that Super Bowl that I just mentioned. But for the most part, I mean, you have an organization that has literally had no success like that in this modern era, and I feel like maybe that's going to be a bigger issue for them. Obviously, like you're saying, it's like obviously Kansas City's been there, done that. They're like the Patriots. These situations, it's not new to them. They're not going in like, oh, what are we going to do? They know how to handle tickets. They know how to handle all the like little things that happen throughout over the next course of the next couple of weeks that have nothing to do with actually football on the field. Like they know that. And like you said, to an extent, the 49ers do too, although I think there are far more newer players in pretty key positions making their trip for the first time. Obviously, Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey. You have some guys on the defensive side, but there are still some core players that were still there in 2019, including the head coach, general manager, and guys like Deebo Samuel and stuff. So, I don't expect either of these teams to fall victim to some of these distractions at all. I think they're well led, a lot of veteran leaders. But like I said, at the same time, it's Las Vegas, so I'm going to be very curious to see how this goes off for the NFL because, I've been a proponent of accepting gambling in this league just because it's been a part of the growth of this league since the beginning, and I think it's a bit hypocritical that it was shunned for so long and treated as what it was and all that. But at the same time, too, I think diving 2 feet in right away could potentially and will it potentially lead to some problems. There's going to be at some point some controversy, John. And I'm not saying it's going to be this weekend or whatever, but there's going to be something. We've already had a Tim Donaghy back in the day. I mean, that doesn't make me feel like we're not due for maybe another one, especially now with all these other, all this gambling opening up across the country. So again, I think that this is a big test for the NFL. I think you're right, though. I think if things go very well, why wouldn't you want to have it in Vegas? Moderate weather, controlled environment, and just the aesthetic of it. I mean, look, they're going to be doing their pre-show in front of the fountains at the Bellagio.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'd much rather that than go sit out in frigid, cold Detroit, probably with like parkas and Gore-Tex on,
Yeah, without question. And then the whole idea of so many hotel rooms. Like, there's probably 3 cities in the United States that can handle anything. I would think Vegas is one of them because it's just built for tourism.
Yeah.
Los Angeles and also New York. I mean, those are the types of cities that you could have a massive convention there. And I don't think most of the people even realize that. Like when Boston hosts something, it just like throws us into a tailspin.
Right.
I remember 10 years ago, I was actually a proponent of bringing the Summer Olympics here for 2024. And people shunned me like, we can't handle this. What's going to happen? The T doesn't work in the snow. And I'm like, well, okay, hopefully we don't get snow in the summer.
Yeah.
So let's leave that out of the discussion. But I also thought that would have been a good thing because I think it would have really rebuilt the infrastructure, maybe improved the T, build more hotel rooms, make it a world-class city. So but a place like Boston is just so old in the way it's just laid out and it's cramped. It's really difficult to host anything like that. I just hope someday they can at least host the NFL draft. I think that would be a pretty cool event. And maybe the NBA All-Star game, which hasn't been to Boston since the early 60s, which is kind of crazy when you consider how legendary the franchise is. But yeah, New York, LA, and Vegas, they could pretty much handle anything, especially Vegas and LA because of the weather. You for the most part, can get nice weather.
Well, I think it was like 70 degrees in Vegas yesterday. I keep tabs, I got it on my weather app, What was the NHL All-Star game, the last All-Star game held in Boston?
No,
well,
actually, the baseball All-Star game in '99.
Right. Yeah. Then, but that's how long ago.
96, maybe.
Yeah, 96.
And that was kind of a farce in a sense that they had the Fan Fest, which I went to, was at the Heinz Convention Center. It just wasn't big enough to handle that.
Right.
And then the Home Run Derby, which was really cool because McGuire and Sosa were hitting bombs out into Lansdowne Street.
The best part, obviously, was Ted Williams and obviously just Pedro dominating. Lord. I mean, when you strike out the side of three Hall of Fame players.
5 of 6 players he faced, he struck out, which is amazing. And the thing people forget is Ken Griffey Jr. actually won the Home Run Derby.
Yeah.
A left-handed hitter hitting rockets into the bullpen. When you had Ted Williams there with Tony Gwynn and you had the All Century team there and Jim Gray, berating Pete Rose, it was kind of this incredible moment. I don't think you're going to get the Major League Baseball All-Star game back here for any time soon because the park, as much as people love it, it's a museum and it's just not easy to deal with. The basketball All-Star game, that just blows my mind. I mean, I think they're going to really push for it. But again, you need more hotel rooms. You need more convention space. I push back when people go, well, no one wants to go to Boston in the winter because of the weather. Well, they've had All-Star games in Cleveland. They're having it in Salt Lake City. I mean, those aren't exactly paradises when it comes to weather. That I'll push back on. It's just that you got to have the infrastructure to deal with it.
And the space. Like you said, I mean,
exactly.
If you haven't been to Boston, it's New York is a grid. These big cities are grids, and sometimes they're easy. This, Boston is not. It's a intricate city of old and new buildings and underground tunnels and narrow side streets and inaccessible crossway. It's just, again, it's not an easy thing to navigate if you're not from there, and even if you are from there, it's not easy to navigate. You're still dealing with those issues.
I had an uncle who when he got married, moved to Illinois, and then he would come and visit once or twice a year. He would drive from Illinois to Boston, park his car at the hotel, and just leave it there till he was going back home. He would just take cabs everywhere because he just couldn't deal with the traffic, the drivers, and the way to get around, which, again, this is pre-GPS. Good luck with that, trying to find places in the city where every street's a one-way. You're just going all over the place.
Well, it's like Frank Costanza when he found that good parking spot. He didn't move for weeks, So
don't blame him.
No, I don't blame him either.
Remember Elaine was skiing with her friend and she wouldn't bring her twice home. She left her like several blocks away. It's like you drove 207 miles. You don't want to drive another 2. Well, the traffic, the one-way street,
Yeah, she had that out of style hairdo. I like it. I like it. That's
Kramer made fun of. Actually, Kramer liked it.
No, Kramer liked it. It backfired. He was supposed to be the one who said something. He said, hey, it's actually pretty good. So anyway, so now, we got on to Boston and Seinfeld, and originally we were talking about Super Bowl preparations and whatnot. But, look, the reality of it is I don't think, we have concerns for either of these two teams in terms of, is the moment going to be too big? You look at, are there, no, I don't want to say doubts, or concerns, but are there questions about Brock Purdy? Sure, but because he's never been here before. But outside of that, there shouldn't be. You know what I mean, John? Like you can have questions based on, okay, he's never played in a Super Bowl before, and it's a different animal. You know what I mean? It's just a different situation, a much bigger halftime. There's the nerves, everything that goes with it. Not everyone's able to handle it. I mean, it's just the facts. But based on what we've seen, there's no reason to doubt that he can't. And I understand people out there. There's, it's the Tom Brady effect, John. We know exactly what's happening. Brock Purdy was a late round draft pick, so people cannot fathom that he's good. I mean, that's the reality. That's all it comes down to. People are talking about, no, he's a game manager. He couldn't do this without this, that, or the other. It's like, no. The reason why you think that he is that is because he was a late round draft pick. And you cannot fathom that maybe, just maybe, teams missed on him, just like they did on Tom Brady. He was a 6th round draft pick, but very clearly, in hindsight, he shouldn't have been. So, it frustrates me a bit, John, because we're doing the same exact thing, and I feel like it's an absolute discredit to what he's done. Because, John, I mean, people, we've heard all week, coming off that rather, I guess, benign performance against the Ravens, that Patrick Mahomes is already the GOAT, based on, well, primarily, oh, look at the 6 straight AFC Championship games and this, that, and the other. Well, what if San Francisco goes out and absolutely blows the top off Kansas City, and Brock Purdy throws 3 or 4 touchdowns and has a great game? All of a sudden, John, Brock Purdy, 2 seasons in the league, back-to-back NFC Championship games, Super Bowl win. If he has a big game, obviously it would be a Super Bowl MVP. And it's like, where do we go from here? And this is kind of more so, I'm not saying like Brock Purdy would overcome Mahomes. I'm sort of pointing to the fact that how quickly these conversations shift and change, because, I'm being told what Patrick Mahomes is doing, despite only having done it for a little bit more than less than a third of Brady's career, has already passed him. So what if Brock Purdy goes out and has, well, a better performance than, Patrick Mahomes in his first Super Bowl, which isn't too far of a stretch because he was good. It wasn't great. He was good. So, like I said, Brock Purdy goes out, throws 4 touchdowns in a blowout of the Chiefs. What are you going to say then, John? Not you, obviously, because you're smart and you know what you're talking about. So,
well, I mean, I don't think anybody's compared Brock Purdy to Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes, before he even showed up to a Super Bowl, had already been a league MVP. So, but
well, I mean, you could again, you could argue that Brock Purdy very much deserved to be in that mix, and that one game against the Ravens absolutely blew it for him. And
yeah, it did. Yeah.
So,
but they did have a horrible game, and I think that the thing is, I think he's quite capable of having another horrible game. I don't think he's played that well in the playoffs, but he stepped up when he had to. Second half against Detroit, fourth quarter against Green Bay. Give him credit for that. I do think that they could have lost both of those games if Green Bay, if Jordan Love didn't, have a brain cramp in the fourth quarter, and if Dan Campbell and the rest of the Lions didn't have a brain cramp in the second half, they probably don't win. But again, Kansas City won a couple of close games as well. Beat Buffalo by 3, beat Baltimore by 7. But again, they're both here. That's who's playing. The whole thing with the Mahomes Brady comparison or the Chiefs Patriots comparison, this is how I'll phrase it: it's like comparing The Godfather to the first 50 minutes of Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so you've seen The Godfather, to me, the greatest movie ever made. Now you're 15 minutes into Goodfellas, and you've still got another hour and a half to go. At the 50-minute mark of Goodfellas, do you say, this is the greatest movie I've ever seen, no matter what happens over the next hour and a half? Like, so you got to kind of let the thing breathe a little bit. And the thing that's interesting about Purdy, there was a guy who played in 3 Super Bowls who wasn't even drafted, and that's Kurt Warner.
Yeah. Oh, so, God. Don't bring up Kurt Warner, John, because he was just a grocery bagger who clearly wasn't as good as Mahomes. There's no way he could do something as impressive as Mahomes.
Right. And wasn't there a period of time where we were in agreement he was the best quarterback in football? I mean, he won the MVP in 99 and in 01, won the Super Bowl in 99. Look, he was the best player on the field against the Patriots. I mean, he threw the pick 6, I get it. Which today's probably a roughing the passer call, right?
Oh, sure. Like, just the way the game's called now. Yeah.
The way it's called now. So, and then he goes to another Super Bowl where I think, again, he's the best player on the field and throws a pick 6 in that game down near the goal. I mean, he's 2 pick 6s away, and I know I'm saying a lot, of being a 3-time Super Bowl champ.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, he was the best player on the field in each of his Super Bowls. But was there a pushback with Kurt Warner? Again, we're going back almost 25 years ago, so there was a different time, right?
There was never really a pushback, though, John. I mean, and like the pushback
maybe
began.
He won an MVP his very first year.
No, not really, because that's the thing. People they weren't overreacting. You know what I mean? Like they weren't like saying like, oh, he's the good. So a couple years ago. Because I did this a few years back when people were going on and on about, Patrick Mahomes had the greatest first season ever. And I would bring up Kurt Warner. and surprise, surprise, Chiefs fans would scoff at it. Like, what are you talking about? He was 26 or whatever, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, look at the numbers. I mean, I'm not a big passer rating guy, but I think it kind of is a very simple way to kind of show how the passing game has kind of inflated over the years because, in 1999, it was, I think the average was like 77 or 78 for a passer rating. And in 2018, it was 96 or 97. And like I said, I don't think passer rate. Look, I'm not a person that's going to sit there and scream about any one individual stat for pointing out how a player played, but like I think in terms of just showing the transition for the last 25 years or so, it's a decent it's decently applicated. Whatever, you know what I'm trying to say. It's a good way to kind of just
a tool to use.
Yes, to at least visualize that in the sense. I mean, there's obviously a lot more to it, but like relative to that, Kurt Warner outperformed his peers more than Patrick Mahomes did in 2018. But again, people cannot see beyond that. They're like, no, what are you talking about? He did 50 and 5,000. Did Brady ever do that? That's my favorite. Did Brady ever throw 50 or 5,000? No, he did 50 and 48.5. Okay, got me.
Yeah, because they were up by 30 points in half the games.
Right, he sat more than
Winston threw for 5,000 yards. Does that make him better than everybody?
Well, that's what I'm saying though. This is where we're at when it comes to discussing quarterbacks. So I don't think that was like that when Warner was winning games. Plus Peyton Manning was actually at that point maybe he wasn't the golden boy yet, but it was
he was the next one. We just assumed he would, and he kind of did take that mantle over for a little bit.
And look, this is, and I'll say this real quick because I saw someone bring this up on Twitter, and it's something I've felt too, and I think you've actually said something very similar. But one of the reasons why, and this is why people have never, I think people, not the majority, but I think there's a large minority of people who begrudgingly accepted that Tom Brady was the greatest, and we're seeing that now because we're seeing these titles parsed to no end. No, he's the greatest, but not the best, or he's the greatest, but not the most talented or most skilled. And it's like I'm just like, why are you doing these things? But you're seeing it play out because Peyton Manning was supposed to be that guy. He was the next one. He was the one earmarked by the media, by the executives, by the NFL. He was the next guy until Brady was. And they just couldn't accept it because it comes, like I said, it comes back to how could this guy who was drafted 199 overall and oh my God, the combine photo, John, the combine photo. Oh my God, the guy, if I'm not mistaken too, I'm pretty sure the guy had appendicitis. So he was down like 20 pounds, like on the heels of that performance. So, but those
that's common with Joe Burrow. There's another thing.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. There you go. So it's like those things created this endless narrative that people still cannot just fathom. How did the 199th overall quarterback become the greatest? Well, he became the greatest because of his team, because of his defense. He's not as talented. He can't make this throw. He can't make that throw. But yet he does. He makes every throw. He's better than Peyton Manning. He's better than Joe Montana. He's better than Patrick Mahomes. Like, it's just the problem is people can't accept that. And to some degree, this is happening to Brock Purdy now because, again, Mr. Irrelevant, there's no way that he could possibly be talented and skilled enough to be this good. It has to be the team around him, John. It has to be.
Well, there've been other great quarterbacks. I mean, Montana was a third-round pick. Johnny Unitas, I think, was drafted later than everyone. Yeah. That's back when they had like 17 rounds. Look, Aaron Rodgers, again.
It's all relative, though.
He was the second quarterback drafted in his draft behind Alex Smith. So, Mahomes was the second quarterback drafted in his draft. Isn't it just kind of laughable, though, that the Bears took Mitch Trubisky?
Yeah, well, traded up for that. The Bears have also never had a 4,000-yard passer in their history. So their quarterback
really amazing, isn't it?
It's incredible.
And I maintain in my lifetime the best passer the Chicago Bears ever had was Walter Payton.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to be
that might be
hyperbolic
true.
here. Go on YouTube and watch the way Walter Payton. He had, I think, a dozen touchdown passes in his career. He threw the ball better than any other quarterback the Bears have had over the last 50 years, with the exception of Jay Cutler, who was a great pure passer, but not a great quarterback. But the Warner thing too is, I think also we've gotten to the point now with the GOAT conversation, which I even hate the term.
Oh, I do
but
too.
When did it start to come about? Like, I don't like. Okay, when Jordan won his 6th title, okay. He's the greatest player of all time. He surpassed Bill Russell, and Bill Russell kind of went along with that as well, even though he had almost twice as many championships. I think a lot of it became with Tiger Woods. And again, this is an individual sport, so sometimes that's easier to compare the top players of all time. You know, okay, he's greater than Jack Nicklaus until he didn't catch him for majors. I think it's 18 for Nicklaus and 15 for Tiger. You can make a case Tiger's the greatest golfer of all time, but Jack's the most accomplished. Right, because he's got 3 more majors.
Well,
but that was the debate then.
Right.
Now we're doing it too soon.
Well, that's like, the problem.
Look at Tiger, right? He was going to surpass Jack, right, and then he didn't.
Yeah, and look, I mean, there's and that's not even like people, because it drives me nuts because people will bring up Jordan and LeBron and you know, Jack and Tiger, and none of them are really that applicable to this situation, because you know, you're trying to say like as if I accept that, yes, Brady is Bill Russell. No, he's Bill Russell, he's LeBron, and he's Michael. Like, do you understand, like, the longevity, the success, and the championships? Like, it's not just 1, 2, or 3. And that's what people are doing. It's like, well, you know, Brady, you know, he's not this, he's not that, he's not Dan Marino. No, he's not. He's better. Like, right. I don't care. Like, you know, when we can look at their entire careers and see that, like I said, I mean, and again, John, Brady, it's funny because Brady had to, I mean, obviously some people called him the GOAT after that 4th Super Bowl. Some didn't, waited until that 5th one. And I'm okay with either.
I said it after the 4th because he equaled Montana. The numbers were better. And losing 2 Super Bowls to me is better than losing twice in the divisional round.
Right. Like, and look, I understood the argument for both, though, at that time. I'm like, okay, you know, I get it. I mean, I know it's so long ago now, and like really, it's really before I was really active on Twitter. I don't even think I really did anything before 2015, to be honest with you. But I would have told you then. I would have been like, look, I love Tom Brady. I mean, I think personally that he was the greatest, but I understood why there was other arguments. And it wasn't just about, oh, he just won this. But at a certain point, John, at a certain point, what is the argument? And that's the problem. Because, like I said, I think there are people out there that begrudgingly accepted that he was the GOAT. So some of these national analysts get up there and call him the GOAT. But as soon as, like I said, this performance by Patrick, my intent was not to come out here and say Patrick Mahomes didn't play that great of a game in the AFC Championship game. I was fine with the way he played. I think he did enough to win. You know, the team obviously went up against a good defensive team that really ramped it up in the second half. So I'm not going to sit there and say he sucked. But he wasn't great. But people are going out there and acting like he just threw 7 touchdowns, threw for 600 yards, and willed his team to victory. And that's why he's the GOAT off this, this performance. And I'm just like, I don't know.
It felt like some of Brady's playoff wins, right? You know, 13-3 over the Rams or 17-14 over the Titans, which is great. Like that, you know what it is? That's kind of what they're proving their own point with these 2 guys. Because here's the thing: Peyton Manning and Aaron Rodgers wouldn't win those games. They would almost find a way to screw it up.
Well, I will, and
I think this is where we're maybe putting Mahomes above those guys. Is that
right?
To do less, and less is more in this situation, right? Like I've often said, checkers over chess. Like Mahomes did what he had to do. Like how many times did Brady do that? That to me is a mark of greatness, right there.
I had someone ask me yesterday, because obviously I'm in endless quarterback debates every day on Twitter, trying to get that Twitter paycheck, as they say. Trust me,
how close do you have to get to that?
I think you have to have like 5 million impressions over like a certain period of time to just be eligible, and then I don't know. So I don't get.
And it's like a penny an impression.
Yeah. It's probably
5 million would be a good good chunk of change.
Yeah, that wouldn't be too bad. I wouldn't mind that. But I did get into this debate, and someone was asking me, why is Brady better? Because every metric favors Aaron Rodgers. Well, good for Aaron Rodgers. In the playoffs, Aaron Rodgers has started 9 drives, John, with less than a 6-point deficit in the fourth quarter. A touchdown would have given the Packers a lead or the win. Rodgers only scored a touchdown on 1 of those 9 drives. The Packers lost 7 of those 8 games. Okay? Brady.
Was that against Arizona, his very first playoff game? I think, if I'm guessing.
I don't have the game specific.
And then they lost, but yeah.
But I mean,
he did it twice against Arizona. Right, I think it's against Arizona, one of those games.
Right, and obviously, I'm not saying that there may have not been some bad luck in there, but conversely, using the same criteria, Brady had 26 drives in 14 games with a chance to take the lead. Brady ended 19 of those 26 drives with a lead or a tie. He led 18 scoring drives, 10 touchdowns, 8 field goals. Brady's team won 11 of those 14.
Yeah,
that's the difference. And when you break it down, a lot of those misses for Rodgers, I think, come in the NFC Championship game, where again, you look at, yes, it's unlucky that they fumbled on the onside kick against Seattle, but the defense took the ball away 5 times.
Lead at that point.
Exactly.
That game should have been that should have been a lapper at that point.
Yeah, and look, and that's
been taking 3 knees, and they should have been up by 17 points or whatever.
Exactly. So
no, I again, what I do is I'll criticize my favorites, and this is something I push back about a lot when people say, "Well, LeBron's not clutch. He's not as clutch as Jordan. He's not as clutch as Kobe." Well, in terms of game-winning shots at the buzzer in the postseason, he has 5 walk-off game-winning shots in the postseason in his career. Jordan has 3, Kobe has 1. So he literally has more than both of those guys combined. Kevin Durant and Steph Curry have 0.
Yeah.
So I've always pushed back and say, well, those are actually the facts. He's like a 50% shooter, when it comes down to the final 10 seconds of a game where he's tied or trailing. Like, it's just like all his numbers show that he is clutch. It's just that he doesn't hit the shot and then jump on the scorer's table the way Kobe did the one time he hit a game-winning shot.
Right.
It's not this iconic moment where Jordan beat Cleveland, won the game and the series, and then just pumped his fist. That's like an iconic moment. With LeBron, he kind of hit the shot, and then it was over. It wasn't a massive celebration, and it wasn't as big a deal. It was more style over substance. Yeah. Jordan, and again, so
very relevant
about that.
Very, very relevant to our discussion. Although, again, I'll give Mahomes credit because there is substance to go along with it.
Oh yeah,
absolutely. Like and
great.
But that's the thing, and it's like, to kind of sum up the style over substances, I don't think anyone mentioned the missed incomplete pass from or the failed bomb from Brady to Moss in Super Bowl 42 until after 2020, and all we heard about was the diving throw. I mean, I still see Chiefs fans with the profile picture of Mahomes diving and what was ultimately an incomplete pass and a blowout. So that right there is substance over whatever. And again, the conversations I've been having for the last couple of days have revolved around, well, Brady can't make all the throws Patrick Mahomes does. No, he can. It's just you're enamored with different styles. That's all it is. Throwing on the run doesn't make you better. And again, if you can accomplish the same exact throw from the pocket on the run, it's what's the difference? Like, why does it matter? Like, you don't get more style points. You don't get more points. The touchdown isn't worth more if you happen to run. So I don't know. It's unfortunately it's not going to change, John. This is just how it's going to be, and I think we just have to accept it. This is how debate is going to go for these sports shows from here on out, and it's never going to change unless we just I don't know. I don't have an option, John. I don't have a solution to this. I wish I did. But, hey, it is what it is. Anyways, all right, we're done for today. We'll be back tomorrow, and like I said, I mean, we're easing into this weekend. We have a football-free weekend, and then we really ramp it up heading into the Super Bowl, and we're going to really get into that next week, of course. So, thank you everyone for tuning in. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.